We didn't get any of that here. It was just really cool.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry I'm running behind, and I apologize to all of you. Senator Gudger's not here with us today, so I thought I'd play his role of being late. For those of y'all who spent time around him, you know that that's funny. All right, Holly, if you would call the roll for us.
Senator Coleman Madison. Senator Gavan.
Here.
Senator Gudger. Senator Kelly. Senator Stewart.
Here.
Representative Pringle. Representative Rafferty. Representative Shedd.
Here.
Representative Simpson. Representative Underwood.
I'm here.
Representative Wilcox. And Senator Barfoot.
I am here.
7, we have a quorum.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank y'all all for being here and kind of had to continue it from last week, and I think that was probably a wise move. We had some folks from especially North Alabama who would have had a difficult time getting here, so appreciate all of you being here. We've got a couple of things that I think we needed to continue to discuss or have some conversations about, and those include the Board of Auctioneers, the Board of Electrical Contractors, and Behavior Analysis. Fourth on that list was massage therapy, and I'm going to suggest that we continue those discussions until we had a bill that has been completely vetted and drafted. I think Senator Gudger has been working on that, and want to make sure that he has an opportunity to be here with us and explain some potential changes that he'd like for us to consider. So with that in mind, if we could, we'll go ahead and get started on discussion on Board of Auctioneers. I think one of the reasons we delayed any conversation about that was because there was we were waiting on an opinion from the AG's office. We now have that. We also have a letter that's been sent to us from the board about some changes that that they intend to implement. I think all of you should have a copy of that or should have gotten a copy of that. And I apologize, I didn't bring mine with me. Margie, do you have yours?
Which one is it? This one?
It was the one that just came out from the Board of Auctioneers. Kind of addressed, thank you. I'll read it out. It's fairly short, so let me just read it, and that'll give maybe some guidance to us and let y'all kind of make a decision on it. Addressed to the members of the Joint Interim Sunset Committee, as you may be aware, the Attorney General recently issued opinion number 2024-008 regarding the jurisdiction of Alabama State Board of Auctioneers, the board, over internet-based auctions. In his opinion, Attorney General Marshall found that the board's jurisdiction did extend to all members of the community that, number one, have an opportunity to publicly bid, number two, are sufficiently notified of the time, place, and collateral to be sold, and three, have access to the location of the collateral. The board wanted to apprise you of the latest decisions regarding the rules for online auction companies in a board meeting held today. And today, that means the date of the letter of January 17th. It was decided that online auction companies would not be required to meet traditional requirements for auctioneer licenses. For example, online-only auction companies would not be required to complete an apprenticeship, take an examination, or have a principal auctioneer. It would simply require them to apply for an online-only auction firm license and pay the typical firm fee. The board has formed a rules committee to solidify suggested rules to be presented to and voted on by the entire board. The goals of the board are to ensure compliance with the Alabama law and, most importantly, the protection of the citizens of the great state of Alabama. Thank you for your assistance. Please do not hesitate to contact me if you have any questions or would like to discuss this further. You may contact me, and it's signed by Mike Fisher, chairman of the board. And so, is that an accurate? If you want to come and speak to the letter or what the board has done.
Sure. Yeah, and that is accurate. What we when I talked to everyone before, and we had talked about the intent of this law, and the intent of the law was not to hinder commerce or make the barrier of entry difficult for somebody that's in the online auction business. basically what we want to do, but this law was there strictly for consumer protection. So if somebody that does live auctions, they're required to have a firm license, just like an online auction company would be. But the auctioneer has to serve an apprenticeship. It's a 1 or 2 year apprenticeship. They've got to go to school. They have to take an exam. So there's a lot more involved to getting an auctioneer's license, which is an individual's license. We realize that online auction companies don't have an individual auctioneer. The platform is actually doing that function. So we just wanted to make sure that the committee understood that we have a meeting scheduled in 3 weeks with a rules committee within the board to draft these rules. But we wanted to make sure that you understood that the main rule is there is no apprenticeship, there is no taking an exam, there is no barrier to entry. All they have to do if you are conducting online auctions is just apply, make application, get your online auction firm license, and I think it's like $150 a year, the same as a regular firm license. And all it does is it now gives the consumer the protections, same protections that the consumers get if they're bidding at a live auction. That's it.
Thank you for that. Members, any questions? I'm appreciative of the letter and the explanation. Sounds like the board has tried to make sure that there is some consumer protection there without being so burdensome to the folks who are trying to utilize that online auction system. So, members, any questions, comments as it relates to what we've just heard? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank everybody for your time.
As it relates to any action that we took last time, I know we did not, I don't remember specific discussion. Were there any other issues that we were waiting on that any of you remember, Dixie, that you may remember from the committee standpoint?
That's all that you guys were waiting on.
Okay. All right. Any opposition then to going ahead and extending this board for the full 4 years? Any opposition to that? That'd be my motion. Is there a second? Have a second. All in favor say aye. And ayes have it. So we will get something drafted on that and extend for the full 4 years. And I appreciate your engagement and being here and explaining that to us. So thank you very much. All right, second thing that we need to take up today is the Board of Electrical Contractors. I believe each of y'all received the proposed bill per our discussion last committee meeting as regarding the provisional license fees, but it still allows for the renewal of existing licenses. Members, each of y'all had an opportunity to review that. Karen, if you could kind of give us an idea of what specifically this bill does, just so we're on the same page.
Right. All it does is, since the board was issuing a provisional license that wasn't really authorized and charging a $75 fee, what this bill does is it only lets the board continue to, with the existing individuals that hold a provisional license, to continue to renew their licenses and charge the fee. But nobody else can get that license after those people phase out. And it has an immediate effective date. So that cuts off anybody who might wait till October 1st or June 4th who wants to jump in there. They don't have that opportunity.
And I think if I remember correctly, our discussions last time centered around that significant issue and the findings that there was maybe licenses being issued that were not contemplated under the law, no rules or regulations that were there. And I think this fixes that without burdening those individuals who had those provisional licenses to where they don't have to go back and have some problems. So it's kind of giving some grace to some folks that fell under that, but making sure that we stop it going forward. So proposed legislation, Jeff? Yes, sir.
A very short question. How do they phase out? I wasn't really sure how that worked.
Well, there's only so many people that hold those licenses right now, and they might either age out and not renew, but these licenses only last for 12 months.
Okay.
And so.
But are
have
they
to renew.
actively trying to get a not a provisional, but a regular license? Or is that kind of the thought of it?
I don't think these people were based on how they explained it to us.
Okay.
There were 525 active provisional licenses in fiscal year 21, and that dropped to 483 in fiscal year 22. It seems to be declining the number that they have, or that's renewing every year.
And they're very limited. They have a county or a municipal permit, and they're
I read that,
confined by
yeah.
those boundaries.
I guess I was hoping that they would progress and, try to get a full license and continue in the field, because I know that we don't want to reduce the workforce, but at the same time, this had to happen. So I'm on board with it. I was just curious, the phase out, if any would be, staying in the workforce.
And I don't remember, do you remember the exact number of provisional licenses that were entered? You got some,
Go ahead.
do you remember, Karen, do you remember, or Dixie, do you remember?
534?
It was 525 in fiscal year 21 and 483 in fiscal year 22.
Okay.
That was the active number of licenses for the provisional license.
But again, those provisional licenses are only for a year anyway, is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay, and I'm not gonna hold you to that. I know I'm asking you kind of on the,
They buy them annually.
okay, all right.
Right, and those people still could choose to take the exam and become an electrician and get a license if someone else wanted to. I don't think it prohibits them from a person from wanting to get the regular license.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just wanted to make sure that I understand, so that, again, I don't want anybody to end up falling in the cracks. So at the end of 2026, October, they cannot renew provisional license.
Well, according to this bill, it'd be it would be immediately effective that the provisional license would end on that date.
Okay, so no more would be issued. But
Right.
the people who currently have those licenses,
Can renew.
okay, they can renew. And I just wanted to be sure that we understand that we're not putting anybody out.
Right.
But now, it does have the stipulation, as I understand it, that you will only be able to operate within the county or city that you live in. You could not operate outside of that area. So you would still be able to operate. Is that, okay?
That's my understanding as well, so.
And they get the license without taking an examination.
Because I retired from Birmingham out of PE department, planning and engineering, and we dealt with a lot of the people that had licenses before the state started giving the exam, because Birmingham had to come up with something. And so a number of those people fell into that category. So I'm glad that we are trying to deal with this. But the main thing is that we don't want to put these people out of work. Thank you.
Agree with that, and I think my understanding is that this legislation does exactly that. It kind of gives some grace and grandfathers them in while.
It's a level playing field for everybody coming in, so everybody plays by the same rules.
That's correct going forward. That's my understanding as well.
Mr. Chairman, that's what I was gonna say, except Senator Colton Madison's always ahead of me. But, it's my understanding, back to your question, Mr. Underwood, and Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, because Keith got his times mixed up, so he's on his way. But these will be full licenses, like contractor licenses, but still be limited to the area where they are currently licensed. That makes sense under provisional license.
So the limitation is just in geography.
Yes.
Okay.
So that'll be the only limitation. And they can keep them, as you say, as long as they want to renew them. So we'll keep people working this way.
Members, any other comments, questions, concerns? I think there was a bill that was disseminated last week, maybe, with those proposed changes. I hope you've all had an opportunity to look at those. And with that being said, then I'd vote to, a motion is to adopt those proposed changes as seen in the proposed bill as part of the Sunset Committee's recommendation. Second by Representative Underwood. Any opposition to using previous rule? Hearing none, It is given a favorable report. All right, next thing on the agenda is behavioral analysis. And truth of the matter is, y'all are going to have to help me out a little bit. This is the one that board that we actually sunset. We wanted to make sure there was no lapse, that the good work that they proposed to do was still done and that needs were being met. And I believe the proposition was to put that under the Department of Mental Health. Is that correct?
Right, I've got a little summary that I typed out earlier.
Okay.
Act 2014-163 established the Alabama Behavior Analyst Licensing Board within the Division of Developmental Disabilities of the Department of Mental Health. That act was codified in Title 34, which is the Professions and Businesses. In 2016, those were amended to clarify that the board was indeed established under the division, authorized the board to enforce adopted rules, and provided further for powers, licensing, funding, criminal background checks, etc. This act terminates that board and requires the Division of Developmental Disabilities, which it is still maintained under of the Department of Mental Health, and the Mental Health Commissioner to license and regulate the practice of these behavior analysts. It's written to be codified in Title 22 under Health, Mental Health, and Environmental Control. The board has had a lot of significant issues since it was created in 2014, and they don't seem like they don't have a staff, they don't have an administrator, and they're not doing their job like they should be, according to the examiners. And right now, the way the board's written, the division will do things like accept applications, issue licenses, investigate, and the commissioner will handle complaints, discipline, and other supervisory acts. But everything's transitioned. Well, it's transitioned over, but it's really still in the place that it was. The board just won't function anymore.
All right, the Department of Mental Health will be over it, no different than it was prior to the formation of the board.
Correct.
It is just now going to be more responsible for the day-to-day operations, and that may be the wrong way of putting it, but the authority to govern that profession will now be on the Department of Mental Health solely, correct? Rather than the board.
Correct.
And as I understand it, there will be no lapse of services because that statute already is there. It already falls up under that, so there won't be any lapse of services.
Correct.
Okay. Members?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to reach out just to check, but we've not heard from anybody. I don't know if your office has heard from any of them either.
Have not that I know of from even the Department of Mental Health. I don't know that. I mean, I haven't heard any opposition from the Department of Mental Health.
Same here.
So I think that's somewhat telling. Their responsibility. We're not creating a new responsibility per se for the Department of Mental Health. It seems that it's just giving them that full authority that was somewhat divested to the board in previous years. So, okay. Members, any other further discussion, comments, or questions?
Just one quick question,
Yes,
sir. Do you remember how many licenses they had? I don't recall. It seemed like it was a... 500. Okay.
They had 495 behavior analyst licenses at the end of February 23 and 34 assistant behavior analysts.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Being said, I'm open to for a motion.
So move.
All right, I'll tell you what, I'll take that as a second. My motion being that we.
Well, it's a second then.
Thank you, that we continue with the proposition that the Board of Behavior Analysis hereby be sunset and subject to control and government as the statute relates and says that the Alabama Department of Mental Health oversee the functions of that board that's been terminated. So that's my motion. Have a second by Senator Coleman Madison. Any opposition? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Ayes have it. Thank you so much for that. Next on the list of things to talk about, and I mentioned it briefly, we've at Massage Therapy Board, we had voted in a previous committee meeting to sunset that. I think Senator Gudger is working on some legislation to bring to us as a sunset committee that would reformulate that board and maybe give some other authorities to the board, continuing that so there's no lapse. We're waiting on Senator Gudger. I know he's been working with LSA and making sure that, in his mind, he has a proposed piece of legislation that he'd like for us to consider as a committee. And so we'll wait on that and take that up when he's here. And whenever that's been fine-tuned, we'll get that out to the members and hope to set a meeting so it's not so inconvenient to everybody. We hope to set a meeting maybe the first week that we're back in session, and we'll get that legislation to you as soon as we can. Any members, any comments, questions, concerns about anything we've done here or what we've not done and we may need to take up today?
Just a question for clarification. So the board as it stands now will continue to function as is until we pass something that changes that?
Well, that's a good point. So as I understand it, when is the date for that sunset? Let me back up. If we do not act, if it's not acted upon to extend any board, specifically this board, then it automatically sunsets. Is that correct?
Unless they're off their rotation.
Unless
The
they're,
majority of the ones that are up here will expire October 1, 2024,
okay.
if we don't act, unless they're off their rotation.
Okay, so we do have time that board has not been sunset, and we've got the legislative session to come up with maybe some new legislation to address some concerns that some members have had, and we'll do that. We'll have an opportunity to meet. Like I said, first week of session, I think is what we're shooting for, and I'm hopeful that we'll have that piece of legislation, proposed legislation, for us to look at, review, and maybe go through with a fine-tooth comb before then, so that we can vote on it as a committee and give our recommendation to the legislature. So, any comments or questions? Anything else that we need to address? Okay, Ms. Riddle, I'd like, if you want an opportunity to, is there anything in your mind that we need to address that we hadn't? We want to make sure that we've done everything that we left outstanding besides therapy board. Sure, absolutely.
The only thing left is what we talked about at the end of our last bit of sunset hearings, was if you had any sort of suggestions for us for this coming up year for the change in the reports. And the two things that I remember were, one, really checking websites, making sure they're accurate, that they have informative information on there, and we've added that procedure. Number two is we are now going to split our significant issues and findings up. We're going to do one that's going to deal more with what was found in surveys, and then more of our procedural type ones, to kind of split that up, and we'll see how y'all like that. But obviously that can change as we need, because I know there was a lot of issues saying, okay, well, this was just in a survey. Yes, and this process is made for that, and so I don't want to diminish that, but maybe we split those up and those be segregated like that. But anything else that y'all want us to do, we are more than happy to look into or change the report to make it more user-friendly, whatever. But I can't change that on my own. It has to be at y'all's direction.
So I would say, and number one, I apologize, members, that I did not remind y'all that that would be a topic of discussion for this meeting. I would say that if you've got anything to Ms. Riddle's point that we know we would like for them to consider changing or putting in a report, moving around, taking out, now's a good time, but also, be thinking about that if you between now and the next meeting, because I know y'all will be open to that. Even then, I'd say as long as significant issues as it relates to the surveys, I do think that's a benefit to kind of segregate those out. What I don't want is a board or committee to, say, well, there's 10 significant issues there. Well, there may only be, one significant issue. It may be that surveys came back and things that we need to address and we didn't know, but I don't think those are significant issues as it relates to the spending of money or other things out there. So,
right.
Thank you for that.
I just have one thing I need to ask about. When we make changes like rules and everything that impact the licensee, I don't know if, well, obviously we've had this come before us, that sometimes maybe those changes or whatever may not be getting out to the broader population. Is there any way that they all have websites, since we're monitoring the websites, but is there any way that we can ensure that those things are put on the website and that it is broken down in layman's term to explain it to them as far as what it means for them, what their requirements are, if there's something that they need to comply. But I think that's really important so that, again, these people are out trying to make a living. But they have a responsibility. It's a different thing if they don't have the information and they don't know and there's no mechanism to get it out. But if it's a place where you can go to it and get it, whether you're in an office setting or whether somebody has to be responsible to pull it off, post it, let everybody know. But they have a responsibility as well, but I think we have a responsibility to put it out there and to explain it to them and what this means.
Well, my suggestion, and we can add this very easily as a procedure, is when we're looking at the website, we can also survey the entity, the Board or Commission, and ask them, what did you do to disseminate this information out to your licensees? Did you just put it on your website? Is it on the front? Did you send out email blasts? Did you send out letters to your licensees? Those might not be required by law, but sunset reviews aren't about what's legal or not. It's about serving your licensees and serving the public. And so we can add that procedure for sure, because I completely understand what you're saying.
I'd just like to second that, because sending out email blasts was an issue with some of the boards where they were saying they didn't have time or money, and we're like, an email blast is very affordable and it doesn't involve postage. So I'd like to make sure that we do get more information on how they communicate and how often they communicate, especially when they have changes.
Right, and I think, if we're not doing that now, we should, as a board and commissions, and we should be moving towards that. You should be collecting that sort of information. And so us looking at it will move them along to be able to do that better, have databases and things like that to be able to share, which I think will help everybody.
And on the complaints, when we get the surveys back and they were saying they weren't contacted, I know we have some of the things tracking, but is there a better way to fine tune that process and making sure of how they respond and they communicate with those complainants that?
Well, they all handle their complaints system differently. I'm trying to say this nicely. Sometimes they were contacted and they'll say they weren't. So we don't know whether they were or weren't. But, most of the laws dictate by certified mail or a complaint process, they have that pretty nailed down. So generally, now I know we have a system at our office and we do certified mail, and some people choose not to pick up the certified letter. So some of those things kind of happen, but I think the law dictates, Karen, you might know this better. Does in the complaints process, doesn't the law dictate that kind of stuff has to go out by certified mail, like a complaint?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Well, we can look at that and let you know.
I would say that if they could send it by certified mail and email, because like I said, people are more apt to read an email if they've collected that information, and not just send it one way, but send it in 2 or more manners.
And something I did, what I thought you were going to ask about and you didn't, which brought something in my head. I thought you were going to ask us about the survey for the complaints. We send out all these surveys. We send out surveys to board members, surveys to licensees, and surveys to people that have had complaints that the board have handled. We do a sampling to do that in most instances. And so some people get upset they didn't get a survey. Well, we don't survey. I think last time I heard, medical licensures had 16,000 licensees, probably way more than that now. We don't survey 16,000 people. We do a sampling. That's what auditing is built on. So everybody's not going to get one, but if people request them from us, we do give them to them. There's kind of some hiccups, in my opinion, with that process too, but I thought that's where you were going, which is not where you were, but I wouldn't mind having an open discussion about how we do our surveying for that kind of stuff also moving forward.
Could y'all send out an email to more than just a small sample?
We don't have their email addresses, and we have asked some boards for email addresses, and they've given them to us. We don't have them all. Some to say they don't have them. The likelihood of an accurate physical address for mailing is higher at the boards than the email addresses. We get a lot of bounce backs when we do that. But yeah, we could, and it's actually a whole lot easier and more efficient for us. But we'll probably get a lot of bounce backs too, and people complaining that they didn't get them, but we can do both ways if the board will give us the stuff. If they have it, I mean, if they have it, they have to give it to us, but.
Well, I don't want to increase your costs, but that's another easy way of just sending out emails. And I would hope that we could do that in our surveys or in the sampling that
Yeah, we do. We did Survey Monkey. What are we doing now? We're doing something different, and people call us all the time and say, "Is this a fraud email?" You know, because it looks a little funny. So we're trying to.
We changed it this year and we use Microsoft Forms. And so now when they open up the form, it has our seal on the top, it has our name on the top, and it looks a lot more official. And we did move last year. If the boards have email addresses for the licensees and for the complainants, we send it out via email and then the form looks the same on their phone. We make sure they could do it from their mobile device or computer. Because otherwise we send them to a website and they have to make sure they type it in just right. And so when they do it by mail, sometimes it's harder. But we've had people call and say, I need a paper one. And so we'll send them one. If they, whatever way they want to participate, we jump through whatever hoop we need to allow them to participate. We had a man last year who talked to us on the phone through his questions and answers and stuff. So, but we've been trying to move it to email because that seems a lot more convenient for people, and we just send them the link. We've hopefully fixed is this real question, at least some. And we get the executive directors to send out something to the licensees saying, be expecting an email from this, whatever the examiner's name is. And if you get one, it's a request to participate in a survey for the sunset review, you know, to let them know that it could be coming.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, good stuff.
Have we actually voted on the straight continuances yet? Quorum?
Yeah,
I think we have.
y'all did that the
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
business
I just wanted to
meeting.
make sure.
Yep.
Well, we had everybody together.
Thank you. Good point. Any other business? All right. We will let all y'all know when we're going to have our next meeting. As I said, I suspect it'll be the first week of the session. So stay tuned. We'll try to get that proposed legislation out to you in time so you can look at it, and we'll be waiting on that, Senator Gudger, if you're listening. So thanks so much. Meeting's adjourned.